I would say that the habitual places that your mind are going to are not the places that you want it to. Because happiness truly is a habit. And if you can change the habitual ways that you're dealing with your mind, you can completely transform your happiness levels.
Hello, and welcome to the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy. And guys, today is going to be a great day. We have with us a happiness strategist, someone who has been studying the mind and its relationship to happiness and suffering for 25 years, the expert of happiness, Monique Rhodes. Welcome, Monique.
Tarryn, I'm so happy to be here with you.
This is so auspicious, Monique. I am so glad that we're chatting, and I cannot wait to hear all about your journey and how you have come to be a happiness strategist. Give us a little background. Tell us about how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I'll give you the condensed version because it's quite a big story. But I grew up in one of the most beautiful countries in the world. New Zealand is such a wonderful place to grow up. But there's always a shadow side when everything's, really wonderful at the same time. And the shadow side in New Zealand is that we have uh, a high statistic around child abuse. And unfortunately, I'm one of those statistics. So I probably by my teenage years, I was pretty depressed and really struggling. And by the age of 19, I found myself in a hospital having tried to take my own life. And as I sat there, Taryn, the question I asked myself was, why am I struggling? Why is this so hard? Why is it that there are other people that I see who seem to do okay in life? And is it something that it's just the way I'm born? Or is there more to it? So I decided to go on a journey to see if I could understand if there was something movable. Was there a way that I could actually have an easier and happier life? And it took me all over the world. I've been all over the place, done loads of wild, crazy things. Like what for 4 years, I rode a motorbike through India. Just looking at myself and visiting and going to different teachings and really trying to discover, what were the answers. So it's taken me all over the place. And I've got to say that my life is just so far beyond the happiness that I even thought was possible by applying the things that I learned over this 25-year journey. And yeah, it's been a life of adventure. And I lived out of a bag for 13 years, traveling the world. It's been amazing. And I've had lots of extraordinary experiences, and they've all come from starting to understand some of these things that we're never taught about how we actually can be happy, how we can relieve that stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, and how we can actually take charge of our lives rather than waiting for external circumstances to change.
What do you think in all this discovery that you've had is the biggest mistake that people make when they're chasing for happiness?
That's a great question. I think the biggest mistake, and it's a completely understandable one, is that we believe what I call the big lie. And the big lie is that happiness can be found outside of yourself. So we live in a world that is selling us to make an economy work. It is consistently telling us that we're not enough. And if we believe that we're not enough, then we will buy the car, the house, we'll chase after the partnership. We will consistently be consuming the things that the corporations want us to consume. And it's very hard not to fall into that trap. It's very, very difficult. We're surrounded by it incessantly, where everywhere we turn, there's marketing coming at us, saying to us, you need these things outside of yourself to be happy. So I think that is the biggest obstacle that we're up against. Every time we look at our phone or go online or even go outside, there's billboards, there's just advertising at us everywhere. And I think that's really, really hard for us to work with unless we're taught how to.
You know, it's so interesting that you say the secret really is to go within yourself. And just like you, I've had the experience of being extremely low and depressed. And in that moment, the person I was most unhappy with, the person I liked the least was myself. I think
Yes.
if I heard at that time, only you can bring your own happiness, I wouldn't have even known where to start. So how do you advise people who are just feeling so low when they themselves seem to be disappointing themselves more than anyone else?
Yeah, there's so many aspects to it, but one of the first things that I think of when you ask that question, Taryn, is this: is it's like when we're suffering from stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, which so many of us are, it's important for us to think about, like, we wake up in the morning and this is I'll speak for myself. When I wake up in the morning, one of the first things I do is I put on some clean clothes, I take a shower, I brush my teeth. I like to keep my workspace really clean and tidy and my home really clean and tidy. But when we think about it, like, the truth is that we don't live in our home. We don't live in our office. We don't even live in our clothes. The place that we live in is actually in our mind. And when was the last time you cleaned out your mind?
Mm,
So we're consistently living in this environment in our own heads where we're filling ourselves with so much information that we don't need to be, that is making our minds just such a mess and just so much chaos. So one of the
mm,
first things I think that we need to look at when we're looking at emergency, like, I've got to bring the stress and anxiety levels down, is if we understand this idea, we are what we eat, then we also need to think about we are what we think. So to be very thoughtful about what you're consuming. And a really
mm,
easy way to do that is to go, okay, when I'm around this person, how do I feel afterwards? When I watch this TV show, how do I feel afterwards? When I'm on social media for half an hour, 2 hours, how do I feel afterwards? And then to start to think about what are the activities that I do that do make me feel good? Actually, I feel better when I've gone for a run or a walk than I do when I've been on social media for an hour. I feel better when I've been out in nature. I feel better watching, you know, a really cheesy, sweet TV show than I do watching something that's kind of dark and heavy.
mm,
I feel better when I'm around my sister than I do around this other particular person. And to start to become conscious of that, because we have a tendency to go through our lives pretty unconsciously. And
mm,
when we're going through it unconsciously, we don't actually see the effect that a whole bunch of things are having on us. And I really also bring into that, Taryn, like food and sleep as well. Like, you'll be amazed the effect that food has on your body that you don't even realize. And when your body shifts, then your mind starts to shift. So it's
mm,
important for us to understand that the two are intertwined with each other. So, yeah, I would say look at your consumption. What am I
mm.
consuming? How does it leave me feeling?
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. And I think that the sleep aspect is also something that's so overlooked, especially with high highly successful, driven business owners. That's one of the things that we tend to dip into and rob ourselves of so often when we feel like we have so many other important tasks to take on. And the last thing to survive is your sleep. But it really puts you in a place of deprivation in so many ways, and especially in terms of being able to maintain a happy feeling, or just a feeling of not being overwhelmed and full of anxiety all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there's this whole thing that I have a tendency to teach on creating boundaries around things. You know,
Mm,
See if you can be boundaried. Like, it's really good to establish a sleeping pattern where you can see how many hours do I need?
mm,
Me, not what anybody else needs, but me, you know? And I've actually done a lot of experimentation to find that is if I get 7 hours sleep, I'm great. Anything under that, I start to struggle a little bit with myself. So I
mm,
know, okay, if I'm going to get up at 5 in the morning, which I do, This is the time I need to get to sleep so that I'm really well for my next day.
Mm,
But also within that, it can be very easy, particularly when we're business owners, is to get ourselves into this cycle of thinking, I've got to do more, I've got to do more, and not also having boundaries around that. It's really important to have the space. The space is always what makes something so incredibly beautiful. You look into a beautiful building or you look outside as I'm looking outside here. It's the space that makes it so beautiful. To have that rest, to have that time where you spend time with people you love, doing things that you love will give you so much energy and you will
mhm,
come back into your work feeling completely different than if you just keep pushing through thinking if I put more and more hours in, I'm going to do well here. You won't. You literally will just burn out. So to have specific kind of goals or boundaries around this is the amount of work that I'm going to do today, and when I'm done, the computer's closed.
mm,
Don't have email on your phone. I don't have email on my phone.
mm,
Be really thoughtful about all of those things that are pinging at you when you finish your workday. Because if you think that your nervous system for a long time can tolerate all of these things coming at you, I promise you, it can't. And just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean that your body can actually handle it.
mm. And possibly that all of us have different tolerances.
Absolutely. But
Mm,
I'm not 100% sure. I think that, sometimes, Taryn, when you've been eating food not so well for a long time and you don't even realize that it's causing problems in your body, and then you start eating clean and all of a sudden you're like, "I feel completely different." I think we get pretty numbed out. So I don't know, it could be I'm worried about saying that because I think someone could go, "Well, I've just got a different tolerance." I've heard
yeah,
this before.
I
But
can do with 4 hours of sleep.
yes,
Yeah. Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know?
I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I agree with you in that regard, is that we tell ourselves these stories that may or may not be true because we don't know any different until we try different, until we feel different. I wanted to also comment before we got on too much further in terms of you are what you consume. I was listening to one of your excellent podcast episodes. You have these great little nuggets, little snippet podcast episodes, and one of them was talking about the thoughts that you think. So this idea even of the thoughts that you're consuming, your own thoughts in your head. And I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit and illuminate us on the thoughts that you're thinking.
Yeah, I really think as the years go by, I really believe that whatever we're thinking is what is mirrored back to us. So it's really important that we have some understanding. So if you're someone who's going through the world and you're really struggling, you'll be having a lot of struggling thoughts and you will experience a lot of struggling circumstances. If you're someone who goes through the world really happy and positive, and I don't mean this in a way that you just kind of pretend to be and you sort of bypass what's going on for you, but if you genuinely go through the world in a happy, positive way and you see the goodness in things, then a lot of goodness is going to show up for you. So I think it's really important that we learn how to tame and train our mind because our minds are completely out of control. You know,
Mm,
it's like sometimes I think it's like we wake up in the morning and there's this wild pony outside the door of our eyes, and we open our eyes and we're thrown onto this wild pony that goes off in all sorts of different directions. And every so often it slows down to eat a little bit of grass, but something spooks it pretty quickly. And that's how my mind used to be. It was like that. But ideally, if we can learn to tame and train our mind is becomes a lot more like a beautiful horse with a bridle and saddle that you get to lead where you want it to go rather than
mm,
it taking you on a ride. And I don't think that most people really understand that it is actually possible to tame and train their mind. It is possible, just like you can train your body, you can train your mind. And if you're finding that your life is unhappy, I would say that the habitual places that your mind are going to are not the places that you want it to. Because
mm.
Happiness truly is a habit. And if you can change the habitual ways that you're dealing with your mind, you can completely transform your happiness levels.
So how do you start? You start with, I'm guessing, what one of the things you're leading towards is intention setting, creating an intention of how you want to be, how you want to feel, how you want to think.
No, that's not where I was going to go, but I love that.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool. No,
yes,
let's go and let's see what you were going to say. I love it.
sure, you can set intentions, but it's more looking at the mind, like really creating a relationship with your mind. Because for most of us, one, our minds are out of control, and two, we don't know ourselves. So if you can start to build a relationship with yourself and your mind, things start to change. And truly, the most powerful way to do that is to begin a meditation practice.
Mm.
And for anyone who hears this and goes, whoa, no, wait a second. Ugh, I've heard this. I don't want to do it. It could be that you don't really understand what meditation is, or you've been taught it in a way that hasn't been beneficial for you. Because a lot of people will say to me, I know that I should probably meditate, but I can't stop my mind. Like, I know you're supposed to have no thoughts. It's not the truth. Learning meditation isn't about stopping your thoughts. Your thoughts are as natural in your mind as the waves are in the ocean. But if you think about it with that analogy, the waves in the ocean, they rise up and then they dissolve again. They rise up and they dissolve again. And that's what our thoughts are like. They're just as naturally in our mind as that. But what we do, Taryn, is we have a tendency to chase after them or reject them. So a thought will come up and we'll be like, yes, and we'll run off into a days of our lives
Yeah.
drama with it, right? Or a thought will come up and we'll go, I don't want to think about that. And we'll try and push it away. And in the trying to push it away, we actually keep it round as well. So meditation teaches us to actually start to see what are the thoughts that go on in my mind. It's kind of like an investigation. And how can I allow them just to come up and dissolve again as naturally as the waves in the ocean? And so that's what we're learning. Basically, what happens is thoughts come up, they entice us off somewhere else, and we bring our mind back. We're enticed off, we bring our mind back. That is the practice of meditation. So, actually, if you've got lots of thoughts, meditation is really fun because all you're doing is playing a little game with yourself. Can I bring myself back to the present moment? And as
Mm,
you learn to bring yourself back to the present moment, you start to understand something. There are three places we can live in: the past, the present, or the future.
mm,
So the past doesn't exist. And not only
mhm,
that, our memory of it is so completely skewed towards what we remember of it. So the past really is just an illusion. The
mm,
present is there. The future, well, the future hasn't even come yet. And all we're doing is an imagining of what the future could possibly be. So the future doesn't exist. If I was to say to you, Taryn, what's going to happen tomorrow? You could have a guess, but probably 95% of it will be incorrect. So the future also is an imagining. The only place that actually exists is this present moment. So, meditation teaches us how to train our mind to come into the present moment. When we
mm,
do this, all of our thoughts that usually dance off into the past and dance off into imaginings of the future start to dissolve. And in that dissolution of those thoughts, our stress, our anxiety, and our overwhelm starts to dissolve as well. Because that dancing mind, that untrained, out of control mind, creates the stress, anxiety, and overwhelm by going all over the place into thoughts of the past and to thoughts of the future. Does that make sense?
absolutely, absolutely, and I love the idea of being the observer of it, of your thoughts that are coming and going and not judging them. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you didn't get into business to be miserable. The problem is that people feel that if their business gets busier, if they start becoming more successful, that happiness will eventually set in. But it can actually get worse. This is why I created the Business of Happiness Prosperity Coaching. In this one-on-one coaching, we look at how to redefine success on your terms and re-find the joy and the passion in your dream. Visit me at thebizofhappiness.com and become the happiest business owner you know.
Yeah, we have to
Mhm.
it's fun. It's just a play. Like, we
Mhm.
take it all so seriously, but it's not that serious. We just sit back, we watch our thoughts. When I first started learning to meditate, the most hilarious thing that I saw was after a while, I was like, "Really? Do I think about this particular thing all the time?" You know?
Mm,
You sit there and you'll be like, "Huh." And after a while, I got bored with it. I'm
mm,
kind of bored with thinking about this. So I would let it go. And then over time, more and more space really came into my mind because there was a whole bunch of things I thought about unconsciously, repeatedly, that I was like, I don't really want to think about this anymore.
mm.
And all the space was created in my mind.
I'm so fascinated to know. I would love to know in terms of your personal practice. Sounds like meditation is one of those non-negotiables in your day that you talk about having boundaries around that and your sleep. What are some other non-negotiables? In other words, things that you rely on or you are or have so much value around in terms of maintaining your happiness?
Yeah. So I used to use the word disciplined, but I call it choose-a-plan now. I choose
Like it.
a whole bunch of things for myself. Not because they're not negotiable even, but I just
Uh,
choose them. I know I'm gonna feel better. So meditation is one of those things, absolutely. Even getting up in the morning early. I feel that if I get up early, I'm in a better space if I get up early. When I wake up in the morning after I've done my meditation practice, I have a series of questions that I ask myself. That's where I get into the intentional stuff. I have a series of
mm,
questions that I ask myself for the day that get me set up for the day, and I love those. I do gratitude practices in amongst that as well, and I do something similar at the end of the day. So I start my day and I finish my day really intentionally, so I can look at how do I want the day to be and how am I finishing the day. Exercise is another one that I do. I'm very, very, very conscious of my social connections. I'm really aware of how much is enough and how much is not enough. So, yeah, I'm just really thoughtful. I've COVID was really interesting for me, Taryn, because I had 9 months of solid lockdown in Los Angeles, and then I came home to New Zealand to ride it out for a bit. And I've been here for a year and almost 3 months. Getting close to leaving. It's time to head back to the States. But while I was here, what I saw after 9 solid months of lockdown was that I saw that I was actually able to deal with less social interaction than I thought
mm,
because I walked
mm,
back into New Zealand, which was completely COVID free, and where I live, completely COVID free until yesterday, actually. We've just got our first Omicron case down where I'm living in New Zealand. Yes. So it's kind of funny. So I
wow.
started to, so I had no, like, one small lockdown where I live since I've been here. But I saw that actually I was able to go from one extreme to the other. One extreme was doing lots and lots of stuff, traveling heaps, seeing lots of people, to no one pretty much for 9 months. And
Mm,
coming home to New Zealand and going, "Okay, I'm able to do one solid social interaction a day. Anything
mm,
more than that, and I'm overloaded. And anything less than one in-person social interaction every 2 days, it's not enough." So
mm,
that's been fascinating for me as well. Looking
mm,
again at my wellness and going, yeah, like going to like tomorrow, my sister's having a housewarming, and I'm just gonna go to that. That'll be it, and I'll be set, I'll be great for the day. Whereas before I could do 4 or 5 things in a day and not think anything of it. Again, it's that place, Taryn, where we don't see
yeah.
unless we strip everything back. Actually, where is the spot where I'm really well? So it's
Mm,
good for us to look at that. And social connection is a really important one. Whenever I have a client comes to me suffering from depression, one of the first things that I look at is what are your social connections? What is
mm,
happening in your connection? Because usually that is the first place we go to get a quick shift. So yeah, I do dates with myself every week. I do a daily kindness with myself. Um, and I'm just really thoughtful about what I eat, exercise, and when I sleep. And all of these are just so habitual for me. I don't even think about them. They're just the way that my life is set up. But I live a pretty crazy and wild life. I do all sorts of wild things. So also for me, I need travel and stimulation and meeting new people and really challenging myself to do things that scare me also adds up to a really happy life for me.
So, what is a daily kindness? What would that look like in your
Yes,
world?
daily kindness is something that I would do for at least half an hour during the day. And it could be I'm going to sit down and read this book that I really love, but
Mm.
consciously as a gift to myself. And when I say half an hour, that's just a minimum. Like I'm big on kindnesses. It might be that I go walking somewhere. Where I am at the moment is if you've seen The Lord of the Rings, you'll know the area that I'm living in right now. I'm right on
Wow.
the lake here. I go down to the lake to a spot that I love
Mm.
and just soak it in as consciously as a gift for myself. We're in summer here in New Zealand right now. I might go to the supermarket and buy some of the beautiful melons that I love and just make a beautiful big fruit salad and gift it to myself. Because,
Mm.
so much of our energy is about giving out, but it's so vital that we fill our own well and we don't rely on other people to do it for us. So I'm always doing at least one thing a day for myself, and that's at least. That is loving to myself because I think we're deeply reliant on external circumstances and other people to give us the love that if we can give to ourselves, we're much more grounded and solid. Because other people's love is wonderful, but it's the cherry on top. Because if we're dependent on that, other people's love and kindness is unreliable. So we need a love that's reliable, and that love can come from us.
Mm. Well, that is everything. That
Yeah.
is everything. I feel like we could stop this podcast right now because that is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard and the most beautiful practice of giving a gift to yourself every day and having that conscious awareness that this is the gift I am giving and the gift I am receiving. I just think that's the most beautiful practice. I think that there could be nothing more powerful to give ourselves the sense that we have the ability to give ourselves happiness, because I think that's exactly what you were saying, is that we rely on other people and then they disappoint us. We rely on external circumstances and then we get hurt or wounded or we don't receive what we thought we should have. And you're that's just such a beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing that.
You know, the biggest realization for me was that I was the master of my own happiness.
Mhm. Mhm.
Really deeply understand that I was responsible through
Mm.
what I did with myself, with my mind, with my being, that it was actually up to me was the most astounding and most freeing realization.
Mm.
It made me go, "Okay, I wanna be in charge of this now. I don't
Mm.
need to rely on anybody else. I can do this." And that's the key. If I could help your listeners understand one thing is that you can absolutely be the master of it.
So cool. So cool. It also lets everyone else off the hook and allows you to have more open, loving relationships when you don't expect them to be your answer to happiness.
They'll always let you down, not
Yeah.
because they mean to be, but because we're all human beings. So
Mm.
you're always gonna be let down. So the most powerful thing then you can do is say, "Well, if I wanna be happy, what am I doing for my happiness?"
So I'm dying to know, because this episode is coming out right around Valentine's Day. How are you planning on spending Valentine's Day?
Oh, you're gonna laugh at this, okay? You've all gotta forgive me, all right? I am not an American. So to me, Valentine's Day is an American import into New Zealand. And, yeah, so that's really sweet. I'm gonna say to you on Valentine's Day, I do have a plan. I am going to, be having Valentine's Day with my sister, who her and I have had so much more time while we've been here together.
Mm.
We haven't had that time. I didn't grow up with her, I was adopted. So she's my natural sister, and that's what we're going to be doing, is having that time together.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
Go out to a
wonderful.
beautiful restaurant and love each other.
There you go. There you go. Another thing I love to find out from my guests, Monique, is what you perceive as your superpower. What is your superpower?
It's a great question. I do actually have a superpower. The superpower that I have is it's funny because I refer to it as my superpower. I often do coaching sessions with people. And whenever I sit down with a client, I can have them in front of me within 5 to 10 minutes. I'm able to see what is blocking them from being happy. And it
Wow.
truly is my superpower, and I love it, and I can do it without fail. So, it's a wonderful thing. It's almost like I have this ability to cut through, and someone could the other day I was coaching someone, and we started in one place, and then all of a sudden, we dropped down into what was really going on. Within 10 minutes, there it was, and then I can do the work with that person.
Mm,
I have no rhyme or reason for this. It's just a deeply instinctual thing where somehow I know where to go with that person. And it's very, very powerful because I think that, often I'm looking at this beautiful big tree outside of my window here. I feel that often we look at the leaves of the tree
yeah,
or we look at the branches of the tree, but I'm able to quickly get to the root. And if we can get to the root, then it solved all the other displays of this issue. So that is my superpower.
that is really cool. Do you find that there's a commonality amongst people? Is there something that most people struggle with or the block that most people have to happiness? Or is it
Uh,
different for every single person?
and it's usually, based on the childhood. Like, we can usually go
Mm,
to something thematic that's happened in their childhood that has created a habitual way of being in the world or a belief that they believe about themselves. And it's very, very difficult for us to see this in ourself. So to be able to sit with someone who can see it very quickly, then we start working with this belief about themselves, and then we can start doing the work.
really cool. I have to also thank you because you've offered an enormous gift to my audience, and you have this incredible 8-week course called the Happiness Baseline. Am I correct? Is that the name of it? Oh, please tell us about this, and please share with my audience the gift that you're offering to them.
I love it. Listen, the happiness baseline is the course. I have a number of online courses, but it's the one that I'm so proud of. And I set it up a little bit differently. Basically, what it is it's an 8-week online course teaching you how to be happier. And I set it up differently because I discovered that only 3% of people complete an online course. And I worked for 2 years creating this course. The last thing I wanted was to discover that only 3% of people were gonna complete it, because what's the point? What is the point then? So, what we do is we test people with the Penn State University Happiness Inventory, which is like the standard test of people for their happiness levels, at the beginning and at the end of this 8-week course. We have a 100% success rate in shifting people's happiness levels. And we have a 92% completion rate in the course because I don't charge a fee. I charge an accountability bond. My idea was if I could get you to put down a little bit of money and hold it there for you as a bond and say to you, okay, it's an 8-week course. It's not that hard. It takes about 15 minutes a day to do. At the end of the 8 weeks, I'm gonna give you 10 weeks. I'm gonna give you 2 extra weeks to make sure you can do this. At the end of 10 weeks, if you can come back to me and say, "I completed the course," we just go and have a look, see that you did. That's all you need to do. And you say, "I want my accountability bond back." No questions asked, you get it back. And so what I wanna do for your audience is if you go into the happiness baseline, which you can find on my website, moniquerhodes.com, when you get to the checkout page for the happiness baseline, if you put in Dr. Mac, DRMAC, then what I'm going to make it even easier. You get a 50% discount on that accountability bond so that we can get you in there doing this course.
So cool. Thank you. What a
My
great gift to my audience. I'm so excited. I'm excited to go and take the course myself just to see how fabulous this content is and to see the great suggestions that you offer. So I want to, before I ask my final question, I just want to honor you, Monique, and say thank you for the incredible work that you're doing in this world. I think we all have such gifts to give, and I'm so grateful to you for honoring your gifts and for sharing them so freely. So thank you for all that you do.
and I would like to say the same in return because I think that when people are working big jobs in in the corporate world or in a company, there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of pressure to perform. There's a lot of pressure and amongst your workmates. There's a lot of pressure if you're running your own business. And I love it that you're bringing this work into the world with the work that you're doing as well. So the honoring is both ways, and I thank you for it.
Oh, thank you. So my final question as we depart today is what is your definition of happiness?
Oh, that's a good question. Happiness is when you are able to surf the waves. So when we're dealing with our emotions, which we're dealing with all the time, it's so easy to drown in them. But if you can learn to be a surfer of those thoughts and emotions so that you don't get pulled under by them, you don't get drowned by them, and you're actually able to ride the waves of your life, then everything that comes at you, you know you can deal with. And you have the ability to be really well within whatever is going on. And that would be my definition of happiness.
I love it. It's a beautiful image. Thank you so much for joining us today, Monique.
Thank you, Dr. Tarrant. It's been absolutely my pleasure.
Wonderful. And thank you to all of you for joining us today on this episode of The Business of Happiness. And I'm wishing all of you a spectacular rest of the week. Bye bye.